Lesson 9.4, Solving Quadratic Equations by Completing the Square. Our essential question is, how do you write a quadratic in vertex form? So our vocab word is vertex form, and what you may notice is that vertex form looks very different from standard form for a quadratic. Standard form looked like this, similar to standard form for linear equations. So vertex form for a quadratic is very helpful because it tells us the vertex. What I want you to notice though is that in front of the h there is a minus in the formula for vertex form. So that means that h is actually the opposite of how it appears. The opposite of how it appears. So like for example, if the vertex was 2, 3 and we plugged it in, it would look like this. So the 2 would appear to be negative when it's not. It's actually positive. In section 9.3, we saw this with our translations. Remember that we saw that a plus 2 in the parentheses slid the parabola to the right 2. So that slid to the right 2, and then the 3 outside slid it up 3. So that should make sense that our vertex, if we start at 0, 0, is moving to positive 2, positive 3. So it all fits together. On this first slide, we're just practicing. We're practicing looking at a quadratic that's written in vertex form and finding the vertex. And then once we know the vertex, being able to name the axis of symmetry. So on my first problem, if I have a positive 2 in the parentheses, that actually means that my quadratic is sliding to the left 2. Then after the parentheses with the squared, the plus 5 makes it slide up 5. So my vertex is negative 2, positive 5, and then my axis of symmetry matches the vertex. So it's the line x equals negative 2. The second one, the negative 1 in the parentheses slides to the right 1, so it's a positive 1. Then the negative 3 after slides down 3. So my vertex is 1, negative 3. My AOS is x equals 1. The third one, you can think about having a 0 over here. So this one would have a vertex of positive 7, 0. Axis of symmetry, x equals 7. And then the last one would be negative 4, negative 6. And axis of symmetry, x equals negative 4. So in the parentheses, these numbers appear the opposite in your vertex. The number after the parentheses does not. It retains its sign. And that's just because of this minus in a vertex form. Okay, we're going to write the quadratic in vertex form, and then we're going to find all of these characteristics of our graph. For the bottom one, the zeros, we are going to use a graphing calculator instead of graphing by hand. So to write this in vertex form, we are going to complete the square. So completing the square means we need our trinomial to be a perfect square trinomial. I know that it's not a perfect square right now because the number 11 is not a square. It's not a perfect square. So C has to equal b divided by 2 squared. The value that we have in this quadratic for b is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 squared is 16. So we need this number to be a 16. In order to get it to 16, I need to add 5. Since it was already 11, now on the left-hand side I have y plus 5, and on the right-hand side I have a perfect square trinomial. That perfect square trinomial can be written as x plus 4 squared. Remember, if you FOIL x plus 4 times x plus 4, you will get that middle term of 8x. So x squared is x squared, 4 squared is 16, and then that middle term comes from if you FOIL it. Now, we need, for vertex form, we need to have y by itself. So this 5 that's over here needs to get subtracted. So if I subtract this 5, my vertex form is this. Okay, now I can answer all of my questions. So, my vertex, I'm just going to write these on the wrong side. My vertex would be -4, -5, because it's the opposite of the one in the parentheses. That makes my AOS x equals -4. I know that because A, the value of A, so way up here at the top, A equals +1. So that means that my parabola has to open up when A is positive. So I've got a minimum for the vertex. The domain is all real numbers every time. I can put in anything I want for x. The range, though, because this quadratic, this parabola is going up, the y values are increasing, so y is greater than or equal to, and that minimum point at the bottom, the minimum point, the vertex, -5. So remember, this matches right here. The y coordinate on your vertex gives you your range. Okay, now, on my graphing calculator, I am going to graph this quadratic and figure out where it crosses the x-axis, because that's what it means when it asks for zeros. So I'm going to graph it, and I'm going to trace it. And I might even have to zoom in, but I'm just estimating, so I'm not too worried. So my first 0 looks like it's about -1.7. And then if I trace it around to the other side, it's about -6.2. So those are my zeros. Okay, we're going to do one more of these problems. Y equals x squared plus 4x plus 10. Completing the square, C equals 4 divided by 2 squared. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. So I need this to be 4. It's a 10, so I'm going to have to subtract 6 because it's a little bit too high. So you may need to add or subtract to complete your square. So y minus 6 equals x squared plus 4x plus 4. Y minus 6 equals x times x is x squared, and 2 times 2 is 4. So x plus 2 squared. Then I just need to move this 6 so that my y is all by itself. So y equals x plus 2 squared plus 6. All right. My vertex, the opposite of +2 is -2, so -2, 6. That makes my AOS x equals -2. On this problem, again, you see that A equals 1, so our quadratic is opening up again. Vertex is a minimum. The domain is always all real numbers. The range, because our parabola is opening up again, the y values are getting higher and higher. So y is greater than or equal to, take my y coordinate down here, 6. That's the lowest point on our graph. And then my zeros, if I graph this quadratic, what I see is, here are my x and y axis, I see it's up here. It does not cross my x-axis at all. So there are no zeros. There are no solutions. It doesn't cross the x-axis. And that can happen. There doesn't have to be 2 zeros. So if your quadratic is up above, or if it would be down below like this, it doesn't have any zeros. Okay, you should be able to write a summary now, answering your essential question. Make sure that you use complete sentences.